I now hand the conference over to Mr. Prateek Chheda from IIFL Capital Limited. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thanks, Rutuja. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the 4Q FY21 conference call of Ujjivan Small Finance Bank. From the management team, we have Mr. Nitin Chugh, Managing Director and CEO, Mrs. Upma Goel, Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Ashish Goel, Chief Credit Officer, Mr. J. Srinivas Murthy, Head of Liabilities, Mr. Rajat Singh, Head Micro Banking and Rural Banking, Mrs. Sneh Thakur, Head of Credit and Collection, Micro Banking and Rural Banking, and Mr. Deepak Khetan, Head of Investor Relations. I would now like to hand over the call to Mr. Nitin Chugh for his opening comments, post which we can open the floor for questions. Over to you, Nitin.
Thank you, Pradeep. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our earnings call for the fourth quarter of last financial year. I sincerely hope that all of you and your loved ones are well and safe, and hopefully all our prayers collectively will give us enough strength to overcome the pain that we are going through because of the pandemic. We actually finished a fairly challenging last financial year on a very high and optimistic note in the last quarter. We registered our highest ever business and collections outcomes in March. You might have seen that from our results. However, yet again, we are in the midst of a monster second wave all around us, and I'm sure a lot of us have been impacted from very close. In Ujjivan, we've lost 6 of our colleagues just in this second wave, which is very, very disheartening for us. And as of now, nearly 600 of our colleagues are infected and recovering, and we are praying for their speedy recovery. The business and the overall environment was both evolving, it was dynamic, and it was also challenging at the same time. April onwards, we've of course seen the increase in COVID cases all across the country, localized state-level lockdowns. At this point in time, I think nearly 80% or more of the country is already under some kind of a lockdown, and this has indeed affected the livelihoods and business, quite like the last time around. However, the key difference this time is that we have a lot of experiential learning from the last time. We have a very high level of preparedness, and we also have a finite hope in terms of the vaccination, in terms of the reducing number of cases that we are noticing for the last few days now, and the recovery rates which are also improving across the country. And I think more importantly, all the steps that are being taken by the government on the medical infrastructure side and the other fiscal measures that RBI has recently announced, I think those are very, very positive steps in the present environment. In these times, I think we have fared pretty well. We still stand strong as a purpose-driven organization rooted to our mission of serving the best for our customers. And at the same time, we continue to look after our employees, and we are taking all kinds of precautions, and also making sure that our workforce gets vaccinated by the end of July, and we are trying to work towards that as well. So my opening remarks, really speaking, are in the following parts: the last quarter and the highlights of the last quarter. You might have picked up quite a bit of that from the release and the presentation that we circulated. We'll also talk about the situation as we're seeing it right now, the way we are experiencing it, and our preparedness and outlook for the rest of the financial year. So like we've been mentioning in our past calls, we had taken a cautious approach while being optimistic to the new business in the first 3 quarters of FY21, and we had started to grow the business only from December 20 only. And you would recall that in December, our disbursements grew by 8% year on year, which we reported in the last earnings call. That momentum continued well into the fourth quarter, where we delivered an extremely healthy all-round performance. Our Q4 emerged to be the best quarter of the fiscal. In fact, the best quarter ever for Ujjivan, with business growing and surpassing way beyond pre-COVID levels, and collections also improving to 94%. Deposits, for example, grew by 22% on a year-on-year basis to 13,136 crores, with retail deposits at 48%, much like what we had in December. However, our CASA book grew by 85%, and now our CASA ratio is a very healthy 21%, and it seems to be going in the right direction. Our disbursements were highest ever for the quarter. For the month of March, they were indeed the highest ever for a given month also, and our disbursements grew by 31% year-on-year for the quarter at 4,254 crores. The secured book, which we have been trying to build, trying to diversify out of microfinance heavy book that we had, is now 27% versus 23% last year. And the non-microfinance, the secured book is 27% and the non-microfinance book is now around 28%. We also added about 800,000 new customers during the year. We continued adding customers on the liability side through the year, through our digital workflows, etc. But on the asset side, the step up really happened from December onwards. And the share of non-paying customers, starting with the first phase of moratorium, beginning of the COVID-1 wave, that has continued to decline to the share of non-paying customers, and now 96% customers are making payments in some shape or form. We have also progressed substantially on our digital initiatives. We have improved our productivity substantially. I'll talk about that also a little more in detail. And we were able to step up our non-interest income substantially, both through treasury as well as our third-party income line. Our treasury operations actually contributed in a very healthy manner. We generated a substantial amount of trading income, also by participating into the opportunities available to us through OMOs, etc. And our capital adequacy also remains healthy and high at 26.4% and LCR at 116%. So on the fundamentals, I think we are as strong as ever. There has not been a problem at all in the last financial year. So with these levels of fairly strong disbursals, our loan book went up by 11% on a quarter-on-quarter basis from Q3 to Q4 and 7% on a year-on-year basis to 15,140 crores. And the growth was well diversified across all business lines. And, like we've been talking about in the past, we were working towards the non-microfinance businesses also contributing meaningfully enough in the growth in future, and that has really happened. And both MSE as well as affordable housing for us are now very, very large businesses. Now, talking about each of these businesses a little briefly, in microbanking, we did see a pickup and restoration of activity, from November, December onwards. That is when we also decided to start looking at new customers. Before that, we were only dealing with existing customers through repeat loans in a fairly limited manner. And as a result of opening ourselves up in a limited manner to the new customer acquisition, our proportion of new customers went up to 22% in the last quarter. And we disbursed about 3,317 crores, which was 18% higher than the Q4 of last financial year. In March, microbanking disbursed 1,240 crores, which was again a record level for us. In affordable housing, we crossed the milestone of 2,000 crores in our book. This was led on the back of fairly improved productivity and also a diversifying of business into a little more formal segments. In Q4, we disbursed 324 crores, which was 55% up over the previous quarter and 73% up over the same quarter last year. And the affordable housing book grew by 34% on a year-on-year basis, I think, which is very, very healthy. Similarly, the MSE book grew by 31%. We disbursed about 276 crores in the fourth quarter. And we also tied up with a fintech partner, and we've been trying to diversify in the MSE business into more formal segments. In our institutional lending, which we call as FIG, where we deal with MFIs and NBFCs, we also diversified into better rated entities. We were not very, very bullish about the microfinance NBFCs, so we were trying to diversify that book as well. Our disbursements grew by 129% quarter-on-quarter and 189% year-on-year to 240 crores. In fact, in the month of March, again, FIG reported the highest ever disbursals of nearly 185 crores. So that book is now about 648 crores out of our total book, well within the 10% cap that we have an internal benchmark of. In our other businesses like personal loans and vehicle finance, though they were new and relatively small, I think they've scaled up on a fairly large multiplier basis, even though the books continue to be small. But we are scaling up these businesses with a slightly different approach now, and mostly through our branches. And that has resulted in about 44 crores of disbursals in personal loans, which is 5 times more than the fourth quarter of last financial year. And in vehicle finance, we disbursed 38 crores, which is again 4 times compared to the fourth quarter of last financial year. One of the aspects that we have been, working through, and we mentioned this in our recent interactions, in the past interactions also, is to improve on our productivity and efficiencies. And I'm very happy to let you know that our employee productivity has not just improved significantly across all lines of businesses. It has happened with better quality of customer relationships also that we acquired. Our productivity was highest ever in the fourth quarter of last financial year across all businesses and functional areas. And this is despite, we had a headcount reduction of nearly 1,200 to 1,400 people, which you might have noticed from the investor deck. All the businesses have delivered their ever highest numbers and much more in excess of what we were doing a year ago. So clearly enough, our productivity has been significantly improved. At the same time, through our digital workflows, we've been able to reduce the turnaround time for customers, and our error rates, etc., also have reduced substantially. Now coming to collections and provisions, we have spoken about improved collections in the month of March at 94%. The increased collections were due to our multi-pronged strategy and effort to both put out a field force, collection agents, give alternate options to customers to make their repayments, tying up with fintechs and giving them alternate options to make their repayments. And all of this has led to, giving more options to customers and has really helped us, and it continues to help us even in these circumstances when we have a network where we are able to collect payments from customers which are proximate, which are in close proximity. However, in April, of course, there has been a dip, so the 94% dropped to 88%, and largely the impact has been in the second fortnight of April. The first fortnight, while we were experiencing difficulties, but the larger difficulties have started to come only after the 15th of April. We do intend to add more people to our collections organization, which will benefit us in the medium term. Amongst the largest states, Maharashtra continues to be worse hit. It had just about started to recover. It had reached a level of 87% collections efficiency in March. However, that has again dropped in April. And Maharashtra, because it bore the brunt of the second wave, rather earlier on, and even though things are improving, but it continues to drag behind. And some of the other states which are also challenging at the moment are Assam, Kerala, Punjab, MP and Chhattisgarh. MP, Chhattisgarh, though they are small portfolios for us, but the collections efficiency was really impacted because of early lockdowns and the widespread levels of infection. In Assam, while our portfolio is at a bank level only 2%, and in microbanking it's under 3% now, we haven't been dealing with too many new customers over the last 15 months or thereabouts. The government has now announced setting up of a committee to evaluate the loan waiver, which they had announced during the elections time. And we do hope to be able to work with the government and the other SROs, etc., to be able to come to some conclusion. As of now, Assam has dropped in the collections efficiency even lower than what it reported in April. And this is pretty much the feedback that we're hearing from the entire industry which operates in Assam. So we had taken accelerated provisions last quarter, as you would remember, and therefore this quarter we have not taken any provisions. We had at that point in time estimated, slippages and credit losses for Q4, and we had some idea for Q1 as well. However, at no point in time at that stage we were anticipating a second wave, and we were certainly not anticipating a second wave of this magnitude. So I think some of those assumptions have to get recalibrated as we go through this quarter. However, we continue to carry a fairly good amount of provisions of 172 crores on our books, and our provision coverage ratio is 60%, and the extent of book that is covered is in excess of 6%. We had also restructured about 852 crores of our microbanking book, which has performed well in the last quarter. We reached collections efficiencies of 75%. However, much like the rest of the book, that has also dropped in April, and we are keeping a close watch on that and working along with the customers. The good thing is that now RBI has announced a second version of the restructuring framework, which we are working on the policies, procedures, and the other checks and controls. And we should be able to, give some support to the stressed borrowers through this framework as well. In the other businesses, we did not actually do any major restructuring. Now, one of the reasons why the GNPA in our MSE portfolio has gone up is also on account of the estimate that we had for restructuring that time, which we had estimated close to around 100 plus crores. However, when we had the customer level discussions, we would only restructure about 13 crores of that portfolio, as a result of which, the most of it slipped into the higher level of GNPA that you're noticing. We do have plans to identify customers for restructuring, both in housing and MSE, and that is again something we'll work through the restructuring 2.0 framework. I've spoken about the channels that we have added in terms of repayments. For our business distribution, again, we have fintech tie-ups now, which are maturing. We have a fairly steady tie-up in MSE. In personal loans, we have tied up with 2 fintechs, and we are working through a pipeline of at least another 25 fintechs over the next 2 quarters, which will help us in all kinds of workflows, distribution, collections, etc. We are also going to be adding more touch points to our existing tie-ups with Airtel Payments Bank, Pay Nearby, etc. And even the Money Mitra arrangement that we have, we had rolled out about 250 outlets. We would be adding more proximity points for our customers to be able to make their repayments. Now coming to liabilities, the focus was really on build-up of the retail liability portfolio. We also wanted to reduce our cost of deposits. We wanted to replace our wholesale deposits with retail to the extent possible, and because we were going slow on disbursals, we were also keeping our liability business in a range-bound manner, which I have explained in Q2 and Q3 earnings call as well. Our deposits went up to 13,135 crores, 22% year-on-year growth, and the retail book has actually grown by 32%, and is now at 6,242 crores, which is 48% of our total deposits. And the thing that we are most happy about is our CASA, which is now gone up to nearly 2,700 crores, which is 21% of our liabilities. And CASA has indeed grown at 85% year-on-year, both across current as well as savings. This has been possible also through a fairly improved productivity in our branch banking channel and the digital account workflow that we had introduced early on. The cost of deposits, of course, has tended lower through the year. It is now at about 6.6%, and predominantly because of a higher share of CASA, as well as replacing the high cost deposits with lower deposits. In our third-party products, we had a fairly high reliance on our group credit life product, which is bundled along with loans. And since we were not disbursing too much in the first 7-8 months of the year, that income line was under pressure. However, we worked through our retail insurance income line, and we were able to also certify, from roughly about 400 people at the beginning of the year, we took it to nearly 2,800 people by the end of the year, and we were able to work through our branch banking channel, especially to generate a lot of third-party insurance income. As a result of which, our total third-party income has remained unchanged at 20 crores, but the mix of retail has improved substantially, and that gives us the confidence that our branches are now maturing and they should be able to contribute to third-party in a much more meaningful manner. We also expect to introduce mutual funds later during the year. We have got our ARN, and we do expect to introduce mutual funds in the early part of the next quarter. We also had a fairly good allocation for CSR. We spent about 5.53 crores during the year. We wanted to focus largely on COVID relief and things that we could help with, with supporting the healthcare, the health workers, etc. So we have indeed worked through all of this. We also went out on a COVID education program, trying to educate our beneficiaries to practice safe COVID appropriate behavior, and that has really helped, and that is something we are very happy about. We've been able to reach out to nearly 300,000 beneficiaries, both as a combination of the work that we've done along with the healthcare and the law enforcement agencies, as much as what we've done directly ourselves. We also completed 24 infrastructure projects, which we call as Chote Kadam, which are largely in the areas of education, healthcare, etc., with our partner Parinam. Our digital initiatives were well on track. I'd explained this earlier that we have a 3-year roadmap for our digital strategy. We were able to finish rolling out all our APIs. We had 159 of those, which we finished by the end of March. That has helped us and is continuing to help us in tying up with fintechs and many other platform-led partnerships, such as those with NPCI and BBPS, etc. And it is also now turning out to be an alternate servicing channel for us. We do have a pipeline of at least another 25 fintechs in addition to the already 24 that we have. So we expect ourselves to be a fairly meaningful player in the fintech space also through these ecosystem partnerships that we are forging now. Processes were robotized to a large extent. We have a roadmap now of about 125 odd processes. We've completed 14 of them, which are giving us fairly good outcomes in terms of improved efficiencies, etc. And now we have a roadmap to automate another 110 through this financial year, which we hope to complete by December. The digital channels have also started to mobilize business directly from customers, even though it's very small right now, about 8.3 crores of deposits and 4 crores of loans that we have disbursed. But this is giving us a good amount of optimism that these channels can be good, fairly large alternate channels for us as we work through that. We have also invested in a marketing automation tool, which we tested through multiple campaigns, and that is resulting into fairly good outcomes on the balance build-up side in CASA and collections as well through these nudges with existing customers. And we expect that a combination of analytics with marketing automation tool, which we call as MarTech, and the digital channels and digital marketing will help us in creating alternate capabilities for the bank. Now let's come to our plans for this financial year. So we will continue, and this is only in the context of digital that I'm talking about, just to finish that topic. So we will continue enhancing our digital capabilities. We do want to introduce wealth management, like I mentioned, mutual funds, etc. We are also digitizing our insurance workflows through another fintech partner, and we expect to have an end-to-end digital workflow for sourcing insurance and being able to cross-sell. We will continue to benefit from our existing investments in all the partnerships and the API framework that we've made, and these channels will continue to keep adding more capacity for us. We have also put in place a roadmap for artificial intelligence. We have signed up with one of the leading artificial intelligence companies, and while right now we just have a chatbot which is multilingual, but we do have a roadmap to bring in artificial intelligence into a lot of our business workflows over the period of time. A little bit on the RBI measures that have been announced. So like I mentioned, the restructuring framework is being worked out. We are working on the policy and the procedural framework, and we would be able to provide you details at a later date. We have also made use of the other measures that RBI announced. Just yesterday, we participated in the STLRO, and we were able to raise 50 crores. We wanted to test that out, and that is going to be used up in the next 30 days for lending and micro banking. We are also working on the on-tap liquidity of 50,000 crores that RBI announced, and that is expected to help us with lending to MSE business in the healthcare, on the healthcare side, what RBI has announced as, what can be classified as COVID loans, and that program will also get launched very soon. On our financials, I think we have kept a very sharp eye on our costs. Our operating expenses have indeed reduced by about 100 crores. We went line by line through the year. We went through multiple rounds of negotiations. We went through multiple iterations, and we've been able to not just work on our efficiency and productivity, but we've also been able to trim our cost substantially, as a result of which our cost to income for the year is at 60% compared to 67% for the last financial year. A 7% reduction, I think, takes us ahead of our own milestones by at least 1 year. We were originally scheduled to be at 60% by the end of FY22 and 55% by the end of FY23. The quarter 4, of course, has had a higher cost to income at 69%, but that's largely because of the reversal of interest on the non-performing portfolio to the extent of 75 crores, which we've recognized as NPA. And that has impacted a fair number of ratios for the quarter, which includes the NIMs as well as the cost to income ratio. Now for how we are looking ahead, it seems that the second wave is now showing signs of coming under some control. The number of cases are coming down. The business activity is expected to start normalizing once mobility is restored, hopefully in July. If not, sometime in June. We don't expect too much of lockdowns to continue unless the health situation really requires the local governments to take those kind of steps. So we believe that in a lot of ways, Q1 of this year would probably be not very different from Q2 of last financial year, when it was kind of on the path to recovery and unlocking was happening across the country. We've had some disbursals to the extent of about 690 crores in the month of April. So it's not like it's going to be a washout quarter like the first quarter of last year. And in general, we do believe that the sentiment would improve as the healthcare situation starts coming under control. The only difference this time is that a lot of people have been impacted at a personal level. Many of our own colleagues are impacted. Their families are impacted. So it's more of an emotional burden that we have to work through. And we are really trying our best to support our people and everybody else around this time. So we do expect that, we should be able to grow anywhere between 20 to 25% based on our estimates right now. We will, of course, keep calibrating this during the year. And we do expect our CASA to continue to grow. We expect our CASA to be able to, cross 25 to 27%, which will again be 1 year ahead of our original milestones. Our original milestone was to get to 25% by FY23. And the diversification of the asset book will continue. And within each of these businesses, we are again diversifying into more formal segments. We are diversifying into better rated entities in our institutional business. And that process will continue so that we also build these cushions, the logical cushions for a future, quality of the portfolio. And the best thing is that we have tested our capabilities in Q4. Right, we know what we are capable of. We've been able to deliver a certain level of outcomes, and that gives our entire team a lot of confidence that this is what we are capable of. We will, of course, be adding people in businesses where the level of optimum productivity has been achieved, and which we have actually indeed achieved in the last quarter. And therefore, as things start going back to normal, I think we would just be, coming out of this whole situation and going back in full force. We also expect some more fine-tuning of our expenses on the back of our investments in digital, as well as improved efficiencies on the operating expenses side. And we do believe that we have a chance to reduce our cost to income by at least another 300 bits in this financial year. Now, the only thing which is a little unclear to us right now is the extent of credit cost. While we have taken, we are going into this year with a fairly good level of provisions of 172 crores and 60% of PCR. This time around, the things are different because one, there is no moratorium, and last time around we had pretty much of a 100% moratorium, which was followed by gradual unlocking, and then the restructuring framework was announced, which we made use of in Q3. Now we have the whole framework available to us right now. So we will be able to take action and we'll be able to come up with support for our customers, much faster as compared to last year. Okay. The health situation, while it is more alarming, but I think the localized countermeasures, the state-specific lockdowns, the vaccination drive, which I spoke about a little earlier, are also promising enough. And, the whole timely announcement of the restructuring framework, which I'm repeating, is also going to be very beneficial to us. So things are not going to be exactly the same as the last year. We are fairly optimistic this time around. We're just hoping that this whole situation gets over sooner than later. And it does seem like that it would. And therefore, our posturing will remain conservative. And, the estimate for any kind of credit costs or any kind of slippages, I think, will emerge once we go through this whole process of the second round of restructuring and how this quarter really performs. Our overall profitability, which has improved, the performance of the new book, which we added last financial year, which continued to report 99.5+% collections efficiency and is even now performing a lot better, is also expected to cushion this. As much as, the increase in the fee income and other kind of other income lines for us will also contribute to, in a healthy manner to the P&L. So, the other thing is that we will also expand our branch network. We are just finalizing plans. We have shortlisted about 55 new branches that we want to add. We just need to go through some internal approval processes. We also have a few tech investments lined up, like a data lake, analytics, in artificial intelligence, also in augmenting our capacity and network. So all of that will continue. And in summary, what I would say is that we expect this financial year to be a reasonable year of growth and stabilization, with the latter half holding, a lot more promise. And we will also retain our sharp focus on improving our earnings and quality of the balance sheet, maintaining our conservative positioning related to provisioning. So I'll stop here and open this up for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on the touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to ensure that the management is able to address questions from all participants, requested to please limit your question to 2 per participant. If you have a follow-up question, you may rejoin the queue. The first question is from the line of Arav Sangoy from VT Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi sir. Thanks for the opportunity and hope all well at your end.
Yeah, hi. Thank you.
So, my first, if I just look
just look at the PAR number, PAR 31 to 90, it's approximately 4.5%. I have a 2.9% kind of NPA, and apart from that, I have a 6.8% kind of restructuring book. So against this overall stress that we have as of March 31st, and we are well into half of the first quarter, why haven't we chosen to, make some kind of accelerated provisioning this quarter as well? Because from your commentary, it was like pretty clear that we are still not sure about how asset quality outcomes will turn out. So any thoughts on that provisioning front? My second question is on the GNPA. So GNPA has increased quite a lot this quarter, and the broader question I had, like earlier we used to say that microfinance is a business where people rebound very easily, but when we get into second wave, this is second time when the same set of people have been hit twice, like in a matter of maybe 1 year, when they were not able to recover as well. So this 5% collection drop that we are witnessing, like what is the color, like which type of customers are witnessing stress? Is it the same kind of customers which witnessed stress last year, or are these new customers? So thoughts on these two. Thank you.
Okay, so let me answer the first one on additional provisions. Since we are carrying already 172 crores of provisions, unused provisions, we didn't think that there was a need to, create any more provisions in Q4. However, Q1, like I said, we will have to take stock as and when we get better estimates. And we are still going through a situation. April hasn't been like a lost month altogether. Like last year in April, we had 5% collections efficiency. Okay, compared to that, we are at 88% collections efficiency. And May, while it has dropped, and the numbers will come by the end of the month, all is not lost. Okay, so it's not like we are completely in a hopeless situation, and therefore, we run for cover and we try and in any case, 172 crores is a decent enough cover that we have. Coming to the elevated levels of GNPA, one reason, of course, is that we haven't done any significant write-offs. We just done about 72 crores of write-off. Okay, unlike many other lenders who've done very large write-offs, so we didn't want to do that. The question on microfinance borrowers, I think this time around it is lesser to do with occupations, which was more pronounced the last time around, where specific people were impacted and they were not getting their incomes restored because of the loss of livelihood or lockdowns, etc. We also, this time around, the spread is also equally as much into the rural areas as compared to the last time around. So from our point of view, the entire portfolio is behaving similarly. It is not very different from an occupation point of view, very much this time as compared to the last time around. And therefore, I think as things normalize, they will normalize for everybody at the same time. Yes, there will be some occupations which will probably lag, but we don't expect them to lag the same amount as they lagged the last time, where it took them more than 6 to 9 months to recover, and some people actually never recovered. There is a possibility that a small proportion of the portfolio may be permanently impaired and they may not be able to restore their livelihood. But we do have, certain categories of customers who are also very quick to change their occupation. Okay. We are expecting a good monsoon this year, as the forecast has been. We are just hoping that the infections in the rural areas also are taken care of, and I think there is a lot of attention going by the government there. But this time around, things are slightly different. Just the fact that the rural area is more impacted than the urban areas is also causing some concern. Now, if we have to look at specific occupations, especially in, let's say, the month of April, the occupations which were impacted early on because of the lockdowns were not very different from the last time around. Okay, they were pretty much the same, but we didn't see too much of a difference between, let's say, an agri occupation-led set of customers versus somebody who was, let's say, into a housemaid kind of a occupation. Okay, we didn't see too much of an impact. Now, if this continues, then the gap will start to increase. The other thing also to understand on the GNPA is that we did not give any kind of top-up loans. You might have noticed that our Q3 was also fairly subdued. You might have also noticed that Q3 for a lot of other lenders was fairly elevated in terms of new disbursements. Okay, and Q4 hasn't been that much of a Q-on-Q growth for a lot of lenders who had a fairly high, Q3 set of outcomes. Now, we had stayed away from all of that. We have only dealt with our existing customers. We have not done any kind of so-called evergreening, etc. Last time also there was this question around, are you funding your existing customers? We had not done any of that, and the path we chose was to restructure, and that was done under the regulatory framework that is permitted. So from that point of view, I think our GNPAs reflect the true picture. They reflect exactly how you should deal with a portfolio in a responsible manner, how you should work through with your customers, and wherever you need to provide with any assistance, any sort of a framework to customers to help them. That is what we have done. Okay, so I would urge you to not compare, because I think the approach that we have taken is very, very different. I hope that answers to some.
Understood. Yeah, understood. So just to follow up here, so as of March, I had a portfolio at risk of 14.9%. So the collection efficiency drop that we are witnessing in April and May, this 5 to 6%, is it from this PAR pool also, or is there some effect from the standard pool also? And my second follow-up is the write-off for the whole year, if you could share that number. So that's it from mine.
Write-off for the full year is 74 crores, and the impact on all kinds of customers, all kinds of buckets is uniform. We are not seeing any difference in terms of some bucket behaving differently, and especially in the context of how much it has dropped over March. It is generally uniform, and that is why I also specified that if we look through the occupations, we are not seeing too much of a difference between one occupation type and the other right now. If this continues, then obviously things are going to be very different.
Understood, sir. Thank you, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Rashil Shah from CapGrow Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my question got answered. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Amanpreet Singh from Oculus Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, am I audible, sir?
Yes, you're audible. Please go on.
Yes. So I was actually looking at your employee costs and looking at a trend over the last 8-9 quarters, and I saw that we are back at like about 6 to 7 quarters back. What the trend was about 170 odd crore. So what kind of optimization has happened, or is it due to any attrition that you are seeing? And is there any attrition at higher levels, or what is that? And my second question is, what is your view on the talent pipeline? Are you seeing any churn, or are you looking to bolster senior leadership in existing segments or in the newer products that you are also introducing?
See, our employee costs remain unchanged on a year-on-year basis. So I didn't quite get it that how it's different on a quarter-on-quarter basis. What has really happened is that because of the improved productivities, the variable cost for the sales teams have gone up. Okay, and that to some extent reflects in our overall employee cost, but that is a good cost to carry because it is proportionate to the amount of business that people have been able to generate. Right now, in terms of the headcount reduction that we've seen, that of course would have added to some savings in the employee cost. But we've also given an increment during the year. Even though we gave it only in October after reviewing the situation for the first 2 quarters, we gave it prospectively from October onwards. So some change in the overall payroll bill would have also happened because of the increments that we've given. I don't think there are any significant gains because of the attrition, and we have not looked at attrition from that point of view in any case. We also did not lay off anybody. I mean, all this attrition that has happened is all natural. We, the usual attrition, and most of it picked up during the second half of the year rather than the first half. Now, in terms of bolstering our leadership team, I think I can tell you this very confidently that we are probably the strongest team amongst our peer group, the leadership team. We have been able to strengthen our team over a period of time, and at the moment, I think we do believe that while we will keep intaking people wherever we have requirements for, or wherever we are expanding, or whatever else that we are doing, but we are not finding any problem with attracting talent. If at all, we are attracting more and better talent over a period of time.
That answers my question. Thank you, sir. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Anand Bhavnani from White Oak Capital. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. 2 questions. One is, if you can give us the split of disbursements in FY21 across 3 heads: new customers, existing customers who completed a loan, and existing customers who got a second loan because of a good history. So what would be the percentage splits?
You mean in microfinance or overall?
Microfinance.
So like I said, in the last quarter, we had 22% disbursements happening to new customers, right? And 78% to existing customers. And through the years, we have worked through, in the first quarter, we just had probably about 5%. That went up to, I think 8 or 9 or 10% in the next quarter. and finally went up to 14% or 13% in the third quarter, and now it's at 22%. So we have been mostly dealing with the existing set of customers. Most of them would be in the second cycle or the third cycle. Largely would be in the third cycle.
Sure. And on the basis of last year's experience, how would you want your disbursals in terms of geography to be different this year based on the experience with customers in different geographies? And do you see any particular geographies to avoid or to prioritize?
Again, in the context of customer acquisition, right?
Yeah. For FY22, given the experience in FY21, are there certain geographies which you want to avoid or target? Just trying to understand how has been our experience across various geographies and if there are any tangible conclusions you are going from it.
No, that's a very good question to give you a lot of insight on. So first of all, I think because we also tightened our credit policy framework last year, April, and we ran a 100-day policy, then we subsequently extended that to another 100 days, we were very conscious of what kind of new customers we acquire, okay, at a general level. In the non-microfinance businesses, it has been our desire, and we are working towards bringing in more formal category of customers. I mean, one of the reasons which I also explained for higher levels of GNPAs and MSE is that largely the GNPAs are coming from the informal segment and the low-ticket loans, which are under 25 lakhs, right? So we do acknowledge the fact that we need to cushion the portfolio, we need to bring in more formal categories, balance sheet-led lending, audited financial-based lending, and we've been able to make that shift in our people skills as well as our business strategy over the last few months, especially in a business like MSE. In housing, we are now dealing with more formal salaried customers, unlike in the past where we had a larger proportion of cash salaried customers, which are again mostly informal in nature. Now in microfinance, from the learnings of the past, and since we very carefully calibrated our new customer acquisition and gradually took it up to 22% for the last quarter, for the full year it is not more than 12%. Now this year, in the present situation, we have again rolled back some of those things, and in branches where we need to obviously cater to the existing portfolio, prioritize collections more than anything else, or there is uncertainty about how the recovery might be, we have either stopped new customer acquisition altogether or we would have slowed it down substantially. So again, in this quarter, the focus will be on dealing with existing customers, and next quarter again we will recalibrate and take a call as to what we want to do. But in all the other businesses, I think the whole drive towards formalizing the portfolio to the extent that we can over a period of time, that will continue.
Sure. And lastly, with regards to credit cost, now assuming good news continues, COVID comes under control in India and things are there's no further, do you anticipate FY21 to have similar or lesser or more credit cost than FY21?
See, that is why I didn't want to answer that in a numerical manner, because we also don't have the ability to answer that in any kind of a numerical fashion right now. What I have mentioned in my opening remarks is that how do you qualify the situation right now? How is it different from the last time around? What kind of actions were available to us the last time around? What kind of actions are available to us this time around? Now, we have to be able to judge any kind of estimates based on what we are going through and how soon the whole situation resolves itself, which it does look like that it is resolving itself, and the learnings from the past and the availability of a resolution framework, much in time. Now, all of these learnings will go into making sure that we try and contain it. But it's too early for us to put any kind of a range or any kind of a numerical, goalpost to that. So I would refrain from that, but over time, I think we can keep you all updated about how things are progressing.
Sure. I'll come back in the queue.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Nishant Shah from Macquarie. Please go ahead.
Hi, Nitin. Couple of questions from me. One of them pertains to the question earlier in the call about the staff costs. So last quarter, I think the staff costs were in the handle of about 2 billion, and they've now come down about 17% quarter on quarter, despite having an uptick in disbursements in this quarter. So what kind of explains that?
In the staff cost? Sorry, are you referring to a specific slide in the deck, Nishant?
No, just like the OPEX cost that you have the staff cost that you have reported. If I just hold on, I'll just in the BSE reported filings that you have given, right? For example, let me just quote you the exact amounts. on page number 5 of your BSE filing, the employee cost is 169 crores in this quarter, and it is 203 crores in the previous quarter. So what explains this 17% kind of sequential decline in staff costs, despite this quarter having a lot more business than the last quarter?
Yeah, Upma, I want to answer that.
Sure.
One of the reasons for the decline in the staff cost is that the